Right, I'm going to talk about stock care of your Purdey stock. All Purdey stocks are finished in the finishing shop using an oil finish, which is a combination of some waxes, oils and dryers. In a process that takes between 6 to 8 weeks. Looking after that as a customer or an owner is very, very simple. And I'm about to show you how to do it. We would use, or we recommend using a very, very small amount of boiled linseed oil, which I have here in this bottle. And when I say a very small amount, I mean enough just to cover the tip of your finger, literally just a smidgen on your finger, which you apply to the stock all over till you get a very, very thin film over the whole gun stock, like so. You'll see it will give a bit of an instant shine. It will feel quite oily for a while until the oil actually starts to dry in itself, but it's important that you rub it in as much as possible and don't leave too much of a residue over the top. So I'm doing that using the tips of my fingers, palm of my hand, and just letting the wood absorb the oil till it's just got a very, very thin layer of it back up on top. I also do it around the head. Basically any exposed wood areas can have a thin film of that applied to it. It's important to note at this point that it's worth very much steering clear of your checkering around your grip. If the oil gets in there, it will dry in your checkering, so effectively it will fill up some areas of your checkering, so it's important not to get large amounts of oil in there. You can just run a tiny little thin film of residue on your hands over there, just continuously rubbing it in until it's pretty much all absorbed. It's essential that you don't leave too much on there. If you do, it will become very sticky. It will stick to pretty much anything you put near it. So it's really, really good if you just put a small amount on so the wood can actually absorb most of it and the remainder can dry. I should state at this moment, if you must have very, very clean hands to be doing this. Otherwise you can scratch the actual finish that's already there. This is really good for the wood. It will keep it nourished, it will keep it from drying out, and it will add some luster to it whilst in store. That then left overnight or for a few hours will dry off and be absorbed by the wood and give you plenty of nourishment. That process can also be applied to the forend and any other exposed areas of wood on the gun. I'm going to talk now about reassembly and storage, either for long term or for short term. Start with the Best Gun 12 bore OU. First thing to do is to open the lever to its locked position and lay the gun down there for a second. And I'm going to pick up the barrels and make sure that the luggers are down in their home position. I'm going to apply a thin coating of grease to either side of the steels. Not too much. You can actually put some on there and rub it in, just so you've got a bit of a film. You don't need too much lubricant on there. Pick up the gun, insert the barrels into the action, close the gun, rotate it around up like that and place it either on a table or a bench if you have one handy. Again, a little bit more lubricant on the knuckle. So again, a thin film on both sides of the knuckle. Again, not too much overkill. And pick up the forend. And again, just apply a little bit of grease up there on the forend loop. Pick up the forend, locate it in its position, and click it home. Give it a squeeze. Storage of this gun now. Recommending here, as a gun making point of view, that you always store the gun with the mainsprings in their relaxed position. Now, with an over and under, you take a pair of snap caps, place them into the gun, release the safety, dry fire the gun, place the safety back on. That has left everything now in its relaxed position. Gun can then be stored with its snap caps in its gun cabinet, or should you wish to store it in its case, remove the forend, remove the barrels, remove the snap caps, and it can then be stored in the case. I do recommend releasing the lever catch, and care must always be taken with the cocking rods, which when the gun is not cocked will stick out the front of the action. If they get bent or damaged, that can be an issue, so just care when placing in the case either flat or vertically. Next up is the best gun side by side. Again, grease to the steels, both front and back, in the hook of the front steel, like so. Pick up the gun, locate the barrels into the action, close the gun, grease the knuckle and the forend loop, locate and attach the forend. Again, if this is going to be stored in the gun cabinet, it is then a case of firing off the mechanism and placing in the gun cabinet like so. If there is any oil in the barrels at this point, I would also say if you have space and it's safe to do so, you can store your gun nose end down within your cabinet. That lets any oil that is in the barrel come out the end rather than going back down into the breech, through the face and into your wood and potentially rotting your wood. If your side-by-side is going to be stored in a case, there's no need to do anything with the mainsprings, because without the barrels on it, the side-by-side mechanism is in a relaxed state, so the mainsprings are not under any tension. So it can happily live in its motor case, its flat case, or just in 3 different pieces. Sporter, same story as the Best Gun OU. Okay, finally then we'll move on to the Sporter. Again, pick the gun up, lever open, lever catch engaged. Place the gun down, cut the barrels, small amount of lubrication as with the other 2 guns to the steels. Cut the gun again, insert the barrels into the action, close the gun, back up onto the bench, small amount of lubrication to the knuckle and the loop. Okay, put on the forend, open the gun, insert your snap caps, fire off the action, safety catch back on again. That gun can now again be stored in a cabinet with the snap caps in, with the action uncocked, or if you wish to store it again in the case, forend comes off, therefore the gun won't be able to cock when you take the barrels off. Action and stock come off the gun. Release the lever catch, and then that can be stored in its case if you so wish, as opposed to the cabinet. And that is the safest way of making sure your guns are mechanically sensibly being stored. Environment, wood and metal are not keen whatsoever on moisture of any type. So gun cabinets in an ideal world would be in a nice room temperature room, in a dry environment, free from any potential swings in temperature, either very, very hot or very, very cold. And that is the best storage condition you can have for your shotgun.